Hey everyone, Jonathan here with Iron Forge Consulting Group. Wanted to talk a little bit today about building out an everyday carry IFAK or individual first aid kit. If you stay tuned, we're going to take an in-depth look at the contents and the recommended specs for this IFAK. So like I said, we're going to take an in-depth look at the contents of this everyday carry IFAK. One thing to mention, this IFAK does comply with the March algorithm. So all the injuries that may be sustained in the methodology of handling those through the March algorithm, this IFAK goes directly through that and is compliant with it. We look at our pouch here, right? So we got cool tactical multicam pouch. We've got a nice red pull tab here to open the pouch up. Generally, when you see a red tab like this on gear, it's going to indicate that it is medical equipment. So just know that. Let's say you're on a budget and you don't want to buy one of these pouches. Your nylon is going to be one of your most expensive things. Hey, just a regular day Ziploc bag works perfectly fine. Do not feel like you have to have the latest, greatest, coolest pouch to keep your stuff in. A Ziploc bag is just fine. So let's get into the kit. So we open it up. All right, first thing that comes to mind is a tourniquet. That's what you see, right? That's going to be the first thing in your March algorithm anyway, massive extremity hemorrhage. So your tourniquet's there. This could be a secondary tourniquet, and you could have a primary tourniquet on your person. This could be your primary tourniquet, but we would recommend keeping your primary tourniquet on your person, this being a secondary tourniquet. All right, next, moving on to the airway. We're going to go with a nasal pharyngeal airway. These are tolerated by most people, whether they're conscious or unconscious, whether they have a gag reflex or not. 28 is the size that I typically buy. Everybody in a tactical situation is a 28. What about respiratory system injuries? Well, everybody gets all wrapped around the axle about needles. What you have to keep in mind is a needle is going to be used on you from your everyday carry IFAK and not used on somebody else, right? Unless you're trained how to use this, you don't want to use it. This is a 14 gauge, 3 1/4 inch needle. If you've got the 14 gauge, perfectly fine. At this point, we're moving up to 10 gauge needles, allows a little bit more air to move through there, but the 14 gauges are fine. Another thing about respiratory system injuries, we've got a Hyfin vented chest seal. These are the compact version. And you get 2 of them because if you have an entrance hole, you're going to have an exit hole. Right? So that's there. All right, moving right along. What about other bleeding, right? Wounds that are not amendable to a tourniquet. Well, we've got a hemostatic gauze, right? This is the QuickClot EMS rolled gauze. It gives us a hemostatic agent, and that particular roll is not that expensive. And we have the H&H flat pack compressed gauze. That's going to give us some wound packing material, right? So we might not have enough hemostatic agent, or we may have a larger wound cavity that our hemostatic agent doesn't cover. This compressed gauze allows us to put a little bit more pressure into that wound cavity and hopefully form a better clot. As far as tape is concerned, we're going to recommend just regular duct tape, right? This is just some regular duct tape with a loop of 550 cord wrapped around it to give us a little bit of an extra handle when we're trying to unravel it. Trauma shears. Okay. Gloves. Remember we talked about those, the color of the gloves and doing blood sweeps. Brightly colored gloves that allow us to see the contrast of blood on them. It's going to be a better fit. And then finally, but not the least important, the survival blanket, right? The tinfoil blanket. This is super, super important when we talk about hypothermia prevention. All of the IFAKs that we build out at Iron Forge Consulting Group are compliant with this. They have some sort of either heat retention or some sort of warming capability to them. These are super inexpensive, super important. Make sure you include a survival blanket in your IFAKs. And last, We've got some lubricant for the nasopharyngeal airway. It is not a requirement to have that. Again, this kit's going to be used on you. And if somebody doesn't have it, they're probably just going to run it through your gums and use your saliva to lubricate the nasopharyngeal airway. It's your saliva anyway. It's the casualty saliva. It's not a big deal, right? And here we've got the contents of the everyday carry IFAK. All the contents here, minus the pouch, can be purchased and put together for about $100. And you know, that's subject to change as prices change. So with the pouch, it's going to run you about $115, $120. I always recommend to people that they build their own IFAKs. It's a cost-saving measure, and you are absolutely certain of the contents of that IFAK. This everyday carry IFAK is going to have everything that you need. It's March algorithm compliant, so it handles all the different injury mechanisms that may be sustained during an active threat. It's compact. It's going to allow you to carry it, and you don't even need a fancy pouch like this. You can use any sort of thing to carry the supplies within. Hey guys, thanks for joining me today. This has been Jonathan with Iron Forge Consulting Group, and remember, be harder to kill, train more.